The wind coming off the Gobi Desert doesn't feel like regular wind. It feels like something with intent, sharp, dry, relentless, pushing against your face like a hand that doesn't want you here. You're standing on a ridge in northern China, and stretching in both directions as far as your eyes can possibly reach is a wall, not a fence, not a barrier. A wall, towers rising from it every 100 meters, stone fitted against stone with a precision that still baffles engineers today. It goes over mountains, it drops into valleys, it climbs angles so steep that to build on them at all would require ropes, pulleys, and a kind of desperation you can barely imagine. And here's what hits you first. Not the scale, though the scale is staggering. It's the silence. A structure that required millions of human hands to build, and yet the only sound is wind. Who were those hands? And why does every version of this story seem to leave out the most important part? Welcome to Hidden Past Reveal. If you're here at this hour, with your mind turning over things that don't have easy answers, this channel is built for exactly this kind of night. Subscribing to Hidden Past Revealed takes 2 seconds and means there's always something waiting the next time your mind won't quiet down. Drop a comment with where you are and what time it is. I love knowing who's out there in the dark. And before we go any further, I want to tell you something about this wall that the postcards, the documentaries, the school textbooks, none of them ever say out loud. Most people believe the Great Wall of China was built by the Qin Emperor, the first emperor, the unifier, the tyrant in dragon robes, sometime around 221 BCE. They believe it was built more or less at once, a single magnificent act of imperial will, and that it worked. That it kept the northern nomads out, that it secured the empire, that it was, in other words, a triumph, and most people, if pressed, would estimate that some people died building it, maybe a lot of people, but that this is simply the price of history, a tragic footnote to an impressive achievement. Here's what actually happened. The wall you can visit today, the photogenic, tourist-friendly, UNESCO-listed wall, was almost entirely built by a different dynasty. 1700 years after Qin, the Ming dynasty, from the 14th to the 17th century, constructed the majority of what we now call the Great Wall, the Qin Wall. Most of it is gone, eroded into the earth. Some of it was made of tamped earth and reeds rather than stone. Some of it doesn't even follow the same route. The Great Wall is not one thing. It is a palimpsest, a word that means a manuscript that has been written over, again and again, by different hands across different centuries. At least 6 major dynasties contributed to it. Some sections were built, abandoned, buried, and then literally rediscovered by archaeologists in the 20th century. There is no single Great Wall. There are walls, plural, accumulated across 2,000 years of fear, ambition, and human bone. And here's the loop that stays open now. If we've been wrong about who built it, when we've been wrong about when, what exactly have we been told about how many people died? The number that circulates most often is 1 million, 1 million deaths. It sounds enormous, and it is, but it also functions as a kind of abstraction, large enough to register as tragic, round enough to feel estimated, vague enough to slip past without a face. Chinese historians who have worked with imperial labor records from the Qin period, the records that survived the burning of the books, which is itself another story, suggest that during Qin's construction phase alone, somewhere between 300,000 and 400 raw laborers died, not over a generation, not over a comfortable historical span, many of them in a decade. And Qin's wall was only a portion of the total project. When you account for every dynasty, every rebuild, every expansion, modern estimates reach above 1 million with very little argument from any serious scholar. Some reach higher. But here's what nobody tells you. The deaths were not evenly distributed. They were concentrated in specific, identifiable groups. The Qin Emperor Yingzheng did not hire workers. He conscripted them. Hundreds of thousands of men. Farmers, craftsmen, convicted criminals, conquered peoples from newly annexed territories, were marched north to build in some of the most hostile terrain on earth, the Gobi, the Mongolian steppe fringe. the passes of the Yanshan Mountains, temperatures that dropped to 30 below in winter, no cold weather gear beyond whatever you owned when they took you from your village, rations that historians describe as minimally sufficient, which is a polite way of saying enough to work, not enough to recover. A man named Liu Bang, who would later become the first Han Emperor, was once tasked with escorting a convoy of laborers north to the wall. He watched so many of them die en route that he stopped the march, freed the survivors, and became an outlaw. He said, according to records, that he would rather die a fugitive than deliver living men to their graves. That decision changed Chinese history. But the men who didn't have a Liu Bang escorting them, the ones with officials who didn't flinch, they kept walking north. Here is an image that has never left me since I first read it. Archaeologists excavating sections of the Qin-era wall in Qinghai province in 2016 found human remains, not in graves, not in burial mounds, inside the wall itself. Bodies packed into the fill material, whether they died mid-construction and were simply incorporated into the structure, or whether this was deliberate, a practice some ancient accounts describe as strengthening walls with sacrificial dead, is still being debated, but the image stands. Somewhere in the wall you photograph, somewhere in the structure you admire from a distance, there are people. Think about that for a second. And now comes the turn nobody sees coming. For centuries, the Great Wall was treated as proof of the Qin Emperor's genius. His ruthlessness was reframed as vision. The cost in human life was characterized as an unfortunate necessity, the price of civilization's defense. Later dynasties, particularly the Han, were more ambivalent. Han court intellectuals openly criticized Qin's wall building as a symptom of tyranny. They called it a project of ego and paranoia, not strategy. And here is where the twist sharpens into something strange. They were partly right. Multiple analyses, including modern military strategic assessments, have concluded that the Great Wall, across its entire history, did not reliably stop northern invasions. The Mongols breached it. The Manchu didn't even have to breach it. A disgruntled Ming general simply opened the gate for them in 1644, ending the dynasty. Walls, as it turns out, are only as strong as the loyalty of the people inside them. So what was it actually for? Some historians argue the wall's real function was not to stop invaders, but to control the movement of the empire's own population, to prevent northern farmers from drifting into nomadic ways of life, to stop trade that circumvented imperial tariffs to mark the psychological edge of civilized space. In other words, not a wall against outsiders, but a wall against freedom of movement from within. The Qin Emperor, who also built a 700-room palace and a massive terracotta army to guard his tomb, was a man obsessed with permanence and control. The wall was not just a military installation, it was a statement. You are here. You stay here. The empire decides where the world ends. That's a thought that should feel uncomfortable in a modern context, because it does. Every major society in human history has built some version of this. A line, a boundary, a wall that says order lives on this side, chaos lives on that side. The Roman line stretched across modern Germany and Romania, a vast boundary of forts and watchtowers. Hadrian's Wall cut across northern Britain, the Maginot Line. Every airport security queue, the impulse to draw a line and say this is us. That is not. It is as old as fire. And it almost never works the way it's intended. The Mongols went around the wall. The Anglo-Saxons simply waited for Hadrian's troops to leave. The German army simply went through Belgium. The line is drawn in fear, reinforced in pride, and in the end tends to outlast the civilization that built it, standing not as a monument to victory, but as a monument to the anxiety of impermanence. Here is the dimension of this story that has stayed with me the longest. We know the names of the emperors. We know the name of the dynasty. We know the strategic reasoning, the approximate dates, the architectural innovations. What we do not know, what we cannot recover, are the names of the people inside the wall. The Qin laborer conscripted from Hunan, who walked 800 miles north and never came back. The Ming craftsman who designed the interlocking brick patterns that have survived 5 centuries of Gobi storms. The woman in a village at the wall's edge who waited 11 years for a husband who was not coming home. There is a legend in Chinese culture, so old it may predate the Qin Wall itself, about a woman named Meng Jiangnu. Her husband is taken to build the wall. She walks thousands of miles to find him. She learns he is dead, buried in the wall, and she weeps so hard at the base of the structure that an entire section collapses, revealing his bones. It is a myth. Almost certainly a myth, but myths are the shapes that unbearable truths take when there is no other container for them. The legend of Manjiangnu survived 2,000 years, not because people enjoyed a sad story, but because a sad story was the only way to say what official histories refused to say plainly: we lost someone, and the empire never acknowledged it. Now turn this inward for a moment. You live in a world that is constantly asking you to contribute to something larger than yourself. Your labor, your time, your body, in various small ways, your attention, which, in 2024, is the primary currency being extracted from you at every moment. And the systems that extract these things are very good at reframing the transaction as an honor, a privilege, a duty. The Qin laborers were not told they were being exploited. They were told they were building civilization, that the emperor's vision required their hands, that the wall was for everyone's protection, that their sacrifice had meaning. The most dangerous thing about that story is not that it was wrong, it is that it was also, in some ways, true. The wall did provide some protection. The sacrifice did mean something, and the men still died, nameless, inside it. The wall is still there. You could fly to Beijing, take a train, ride a cable car, and stand on it tomorrow. You could photograph yourself against a backdrop of stone that has absorbed 500 winters. Below your feet, compressed into centuries of earth and fill, is the memory of people who had no say. The wall doesn't care, stone doesn't grieve, but you are here, awake at this hour, and that means something. You carry awareness they never had for themselves. Let that settle. Let the weight of it be exactly what it is. Let your breath slow down. Feel the surface you're lying on, the particular way your body is arranged right now. The temperature of the air against your face. The wall that you've been visiting in your mind tonight is silent now. The Gobi wind has dropped to nothing. Somewhere in the stones the people are still there. Not as ghosts, not as tragedy, but simply as matter, rearranged by history, compressed into permanence. And you, with your thoughts and your warmth and your restless, curious mind, are also matter. Spectacularly complicated matter that somehow became capable of caring about who else was here before you. That's not nothing, that's extraordinary. The same stars that hung over the Qin laborers' campfires, their cold breath rising into a moonlit sky. They're out there tonight, the same ones. You're under the same sky, and that's one of the most quietly remarkable things about being alive. That the distance between you and a man shaping stone in 214 BCE is not as vast as it seems. It's one long unbroken thread. Thank you for being here with Hidden Past Revealed. If this one moved you, a like means more than you know. It helps people who need exactly this kind of night find their way here. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and whether you knew any of this before tonight. Subscribing keeps the channel alive and puts something new in your feed every time the world gets loud and your mind needs somewhere else to go. Channel membership is there if you ever want to go deeper. No pressure, just an open door. Sleep well tonight. You've been a good kind of company. And somewhere above the roof, under the same unbroken dark that stretches from your room to the mountains of northern China, the stars are doing what they've always done, keeping watch over everyone who ever needed a story to carry them into sleep.